Boker Tov, everyone. Back a little morning Torah this morning. I'm going to call this a little hurricane Torah. Torah you can learn from a hurricane. So the hurricane has passed over Raleigh at this point. It was very loud last night. Big storm, lots of wind. Sadly, I know there were a lot of more damage in other parts of our state. And there's been flooding here in Raleigh, but it certainly wasn't as bad as it could have been. But last night, about 2 in the morning, when it was really strong, one of our kids, let the person stay nameless, came into our room and was having problems sleeping. And as we're trying to soothe that child, we heard the wind really strong and the rain. And, it occurred to me, I knew this hurricane was coming. This is not our first rodeo here in North Carolina, sadly. It began to start thinking, wonder what's going to happen with that. There's a toy. I think I left a soccer net out there, and I thought, well, is that can go flying? And, we have a lot of trees. You can see near our house. This is Raleigh, by the way, the city of Oaks. One of those going to fall? The child was thinking this too, and I'm thinking this to learn a little bit, and it definitely got me anxious. And that feeling, of fear, of concern, of worry, of, I had it faintly a couple hours before and the day before, but all of a sudden now it's intense. It kept me up for a number of hours. I was worried. I worried for myself. I worried for people around us, our neighborhood. I worried for our congregation, for our synagogue, in addition to everything we were going through. But then look at this morning. I don't know if you can see the beautiful clouds. It's actually the temperature has changed. I don't know how long it'll last, but it's cooler outside. It's actually beautiful. There's the greenery and the light, the sun. In that moment when it was scary and I offered a few prayers, this idea of holding on to that feeling, what it's like to be in that anxious place, what I wish I would have done when I'm worried, my prayers that come out freely when I'm concerned and scared. And afterwards everything's so beautiful, human nature it just starts to dissipate. And reminding me specifically of these Torah portions we're reading right now in the book of Deuteronomy, the last book of the Torah as we're entering the Promised Land and final the reading. Moses is giving many speeches, preparing our people. We're about to enter the land. Moses knows he's not going to be able to enter the land with us, but he's preparing us. And he's obsessed over and over again, going to the people and saying, when you get into the Promised Land, when you get in the land of Israel, eventually, when you get there, what's going to happen is you're going to forget all about the wandering, the struggles, the lack of, although you had manna, you complained, it was hot, you were tired, it took a long time, you didn't know where we're going, how long it's going to take. Some of you even complained, let's go back to Egypt. He's going to say, but when you get in the Promised Land, and it's beautiful, it's a land of milk and honey, and you're going to have your own place, and you'll be settled, you're going to forget what it was like to struggle in the desert. You may even forget God. You will forget to be grateful. And he's constantly telling them, don't forget what this feels like. Don't forget the wandering. Because even when things are peaceful, if you forget the wandering, then you will lose your soul. Because when we get accustomed to easy living so quickly, we forget what we went through to get to the easy living, like the middle of the night hurricane, when in the morning it looks so gorgeous. And even actually occurred to me additionally, someday, God willing, this pandemic's going to be over. Probably, I don't know how it's going to happen, but in a course of a couple days, please God, vaccine, whatever other reasons that these diseases eventually do stop. In history, without vaccines, they eventually stop. Someday, it's just going to be over. And when that's over, I can't imagine the block parties we're going to have here in our country, in the world. But when it's over, and celebration is fine. I have no issue with celebration. I think we should. Are we going to forget what happened here? The important parts of what's happening now. Yes, being isolation has been suffering, but it's also taught us about how important community is. Yes, it's extremely difficult and scary economically, but will we remember to be generous and to remember that what it's like to suffer and to really let that build compassion in us when this is over? You know, it's so beautiful after the hurricane. But there's Torah of being in the hurricane. No one wants to be in the hurricane. But being in the hurricane gives you a little anxiousness, a little fear, builds a sense of prayer. What's important? What's not important? Can I hold on to that the morning after? That's what Moses was obsessed with. He said, you, Bnei Israel, you're going to forget what's really important when you're sitting back and things are good. Judaism's teachings about that whole issue is, for example, on Passover. To remember Passover, you don't just sit there and say, let me think about it. You eat matzah. Actually eat the bread, or lack of bread. We put a mezuzah on our doorposts to remind ourselves. We wear special religious garb, remembering. Go to the spiritual question to ask ourselves, what will we do when this pandemic's over to remind ourselves of what it felt like in the pandemic so that we don't so soon forget? Maybe we take a video of ourselves of how hard this is, or write it down. Maybe we read it every year at a holiday like Passover or the New Year or other moments. I don't know. Still get to be created. But the Jewish teaching is, when you're in difficult place, there is Torah there. And when it eventually passes, Gam ze yavor, eventually, please God, it will, what will we do to hold on to it? So we can appreciate the beauty of this moment in this morning, really appreciate it. And that appreciation comes from recognizing that we don't hold on to that. We've learned no Torah from our struggle. So the Torah of the hurricane is, in the middle of the hurricane, it is scary. My own child, teenager, was nervous, scared. Not common to come into bed and get snuggles like that. But the next morning when things are calm, can we all remember what it felt like so we don't take life for granted? That's the Torah of the hurricane. That's the Torah of Deuteronomy. That's Moses' obsession. Don't take things for granted. Boker Tov. Please God, I hope all that are listening are safe and recovering. And be safe and healthy. Sei gesund, as we say. Shalom.